So this is Dr. Kavita Singh, Associate Professor in Department of Civil Engineering in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So today we are going to discuss a lecture on importance of structural geology. So if you remember in the previous lectures, we have already discussed about what is the importance of geology, what is the importance of physical geology, how it is important as a civil engineering point of view, how it is important as an economic point of view. So for any construction works, we need to study about the geology. So all the geological information is required before you go for the construction work. So to understand the structures of rock, to understand the structures of earth surface layers, we have to study about the geology. So today we'll be understanding what is structural geology. So structural geology is crucial in understanding the deformations, arrangements of rocks and earth crust. So how the structures of the earth surface features, how the structures of the rocks are arranged, in which order it is arranged, that we are going to study in this structural geology. Now, structural geology is a crucial in understanding the deformations, the arrangements of the rocks, and the earth crust, rocks, and all everything we can understand in this deformations or structural geology. It plays a vital role in engineering. It helps us to play a vital role in engineering, construction, resource exploration, and disaster prevention by analyzing the faults, by analyzing the folds, fractures and stress strains relationships. So it will analyze everything like faults, fold, structures and stress strains and its relationship with the disasters. Now there are different rock structures here. So in these rock structures you can see these are the layers which can be seen like this. So these layers are the layers which are formed by the arrangement of different kinds of rocks. So these kind of rocks can be sedimentary, metamorphic or igneous rocks. So the layer formation type of the structure based on the heat and pressure, what kind of structure it is forming, that all we are going to understand in the structural geology. Now importance in engineering and construction. How the structural geology is very much important in the engineering construction field. So if you talk about the importance of engineering and construction, because of foundation stability. So foundation stability, it identifies weak zones, faults, fractures that can affect the building foundation. It can affect the building foundations and ensures proper site selection, foundation designs, dams, bridges, skyscrapers and tunnels. So it will ensure you the selection of foundations. First of all, we should understand in a foundation stability, we should know about the weak zones. We can identify about the weak zones and what are the faults present over the surface, what are the fractures present over the surface, which can affect the building foundations, It ensures the proper site selection, foundation design for dams, bridges, skyscrapers and tunnels. Now here if you have this kind of earth layers, so this is kind of a structure, the earth layer structure. Now if you talk about the earthquake, when you talk about the earthquake, based on the earthquake there are two things like fault plane and the fault scrap will occur and there will be a focus point. Due to this the faults or fractures will occur. So suppose the earthquake is going to occur, this is the image about the earthquake, right? Earthquake zone. So this is the earthquake zone. Now here will be the focus point. Focus point means, this focus means from where the earthquake starts. So this is the starting point. Okay, starting point. So from where the earthquake will start, from this point it will start and it will spread to this end. So these are all the waves, the seismic waves, which are around the focus point. So exactly above the focus point, we have a surface. We call it as epicenter. Okay, so epicenter is the center exactly above the focus. This is the point where the earthquake starts. So these zones are the weak zones. We call these zones as a weak zones. Okay. So in the foundation stability, these all zones we have to identify. We should know which are the zones comes under the weak zones and what are the faults, fractures which can affect the building foundations. So these are the weak zones, and this can affect the when a building structure when a building structure is uh, established here. So this kind of building structure will be, maybe it will be very much in future there is a chance of failures on these kind of structures. So we have to understand the foundation stability. We should understand whether the foundation is proper or not, then only you should go for the construction work in such zones. So fault zones and the fracture zones, they can affect the building foundations, because if the earthquake has occurred one time, there is a chance that in future also it may occur many times in the future. So which ensures the proper site selection, foundation design of dams, bridges, skyscrapers and tunnels. So which will ensure the site selection, the foundation designs, and the dams, the bridges and the skyscrapers and the tunnels around it. Now, second thing what we should know is about the slope stability and landslide prevention. Now, when we talk about the construction works, so we should understand the structures of the geological rocks, structures of the geological site, because stability and the landslide prevention to be taken care. Stability means the slope should be stable wherever the slope areas are there. That should be stable with a proper foundation, because anytime, anywhere, failure chances may occur. So helps to assess the risk of landslides in the hilly and the mountainous regions, and it guides the roads and railway construction by determining the safe excavation slopes, aids in designing the retaining walls and soil reinforcements and the drainage systems. So here the slope stability and the landslide prevention, it is very much important to understand the structure of the geological features, because it will help us to assess the risk. In the future there may be a chance of failure, so it will help us to assess the risk on the hilly mountainous terrains, and it will guides the roads and railway construction by determining the safe excavation slopes, and it aids in designing the retaining walls, soil reinforcement and the drainage system. Now, tunneling and underground construction, this is the thing is, when a civil engineer will go for the tunneling process, it has to go through the many different kinds of rock. Tunneling is a process where they cut the rock and they try to make the tunnels underground, or they try to make the tunnel, and inside they try to make the railway tracks or roadways. So, tunnel and underground construction, it ensures the tunnel safety. So, if you know the structure of the geology, what kind of structure it has, either it is a sedimentary structure or igneous or any kind of metamorphic rocks are present over there. So, what is the stability of the rock? Based on the stability of the rock, the tunneling construction works are further decided. So it will ensure the tunnel safety by studying the rock mass properties and joints and stress and the conditions. It helps in selecting appropriate tunneling. It will help us to select the appropriate tunneling methods. Example, TBM, drilling and blasting. Now, next thing is seismic hazard assessment. So even if you understand the structural geology, it will help you to understand to for the seismic hazard assessment. Seismic hazard assessment is related to the earthquakes. Related to the earthquakes. So earthquakes are uh, what you can say is, earthquake is a sudden event or disasters which will occur without any information. So these kind of disasters, we have to identify the regions, we have to identify the zones where this kind of structures, this kind of fault region or fracture regions are present. So identifies the active faults and earthquake prone areas. It helps in designing the earthquake resistant structures with flexible foundations and damping systems. So it will help us to identify the active faults, it will help us to identify the earthquake prone areas, and it will later help us to design the proper earthquake resistant structures with a flexible foundation and the damping systems. So this is the main earthquake prone areas. So these are the earthquake prone areas in India. We have different zones which comes under the earthquake prone regions. Now if you talk about zone, we have zone 2, zone 3, zone 4 and zone 5. So we are having actually 4 zones. We count it as a 5 zones, but one zone 1 and zone 2, it is merged with a single zone. So we call it as zone 2, zone 3, zone 4 and zone 5. So if we talk about the areas where you can do the seismic hazard assessments, so if you see all over the India, it is divided into total 4 zones. So now if you talk about the zone 2, so zone 2 is the safest zone. We call it as a safest zone. It is the safest zone. So zone 2, you can see these portions, the central part of India, and the south central of the India, these blue color areas, wherever you can see these areas comes under zone 2. Okay, this comes under zone 2. So zone 2 is the safest zone. So in this zone 2, there is very less chance of earthquake occurrence, or it may not occur also. So this zone is the safest zone, we call it as. And zone 3, these are the regions where sometimes the sudden effect we can see, the sudden earthquake effect we can see. So this yellow color area, wherever you can see here, so these areas comes under zone 3. So it is little vulnerable compared to zone 2. So zone 2 is totally safer zone. So you cannot receive any kind of earthquakes near in these zones. When you talk about the zone 3, so very slight earthquakes with a very low resistant power, with a very low frequency, the intensity, we can say low intensity, the earthquake will appear here. So this is the little compared to zone 2. Zone 3 is the somewhat vulnerable region. Now if you talk about zone 4, zone 4 and zone 5 is the very much vulnerable regions related to the earthquake. So when you talk about zone 4, total Himalayan regions, so total Himalayan regions, it comes under zone 4. So zone 4 is the region where the earthquake occurrence chances are almost 90% chances are there. So most of the time you can see the earthquake occurrence in these regions with a very high intensity, you can see. Now if you talk about the zone 5, zone 5 is the zone which comes in the danger zone. So this zone 5 is the zone we call it as danger zone here. So this is the danger zone, which is the vulnerable region. So many times we see these areas are receiving more earthquakes. Okay, more earthquakes in this region. So more earthquake in this region, oftenly it occurs in the when you talk about this western part of the Gujarat, or north the northeastern states when you talk about. So this entire region is covered with the earthquake prone regions, we say. So seismic hazard assessment, when you talk about structural geology, when you study the structural geology, based on the study of the structural geology, we can just understand the zones, and we can just demarcate the zones in the rest of the part of the India, or any region of any place. You can just mark the zones wherever the areas are under the vulnerable conditions. So based on the vulnerable conditions, you can just go with the earthquake resistant building. We can go with the earthquake resistant building design. Okay, go with the earthquake resistant building designs, and flexible foundations and damping systems. Now, importance in resource exploration. When you talk about resource exploration, so mineral and hydrocarbon exploration, it helps to locate metallic and non-metallic minerals. Now, in resource exploration, in the structural geology, it will tell us about the types of resources present in that layers. So, it will help us to locate the metallic and non-metallic mineral deposits. So, metallic deposits and non-metallic deposits by analyzing the rock deformation patterns. So, different kinds of rocks. As we know that rocks contains most of the types of mineral, either 2 mineral, 3 mineral, 4 mineral. Based on the formation of the rocks, these minerals are present in that. It guides an oil gas exploration by identifying the structural traps in the sedimentary basins. Now, groundwater resource management, when we talk about groundwater resource management, determines the aquifer properties, groundwater flow paths, prevents water contamination by identifying the fault control water movements. So groundwater resource management also can be done with the help of these structural geology, which will determine the aquifer and its properties and the groundwater flow paths, which will prevent the water contamination by identifying the fault control water movements. Now, if we talk about importance in environmental and disaster risk management, so structural geology is also very much important to understand in the environmental and disaster risk management. So, if you know the structure, if you know the type of the feature, if you know the type of the rock, we can just go with this risk management process. It aids in land use planning by mapping hazardous zones. It will aid in land use planning. It will help us to map the hazardous zones, earthquake, landslides, and it helps us to mitigate the risk in mining by assessing rock stability and potential collapses. So, whatever potential collapses are going to happen, it will help us to mitigate the risk in that regions. And disaster risk management is in. It supports the conservation efforts by analyzing geological process affecting the ecosystems. So this will help us to support the conservation efforts by analyzing the geological process affecting the ecosystems too. Integration with soil and rock classification. Soil and rock classification system aims to automate the classifications based on standard systems. Now, integrating structural geology can enhance its accuracy, applicability, and engineering in construction and resource exploration, and it will help us to enhance the accuracy in engineering in the construction field and resource exploration. It will help us to predict the fault zones wherever the fault zones are there and weak rock formations for the construction safety. So when you talk about the structural geology, if you know the structural geology, it is easy to predict the fault zones, it is easy to predict the weak rock formations for the construction safety. And it also improves the GIS-based geological mapping by incorporating deformation analysis. So it will improve the GIS-based geological mapping. It will help us to, GIS is a new technology which will help us to analyze, which will help us to incorporate the deformation analysis and tell us about the weak zones and tell us about the vulnerable zones of the earthquake regions, and enhance the classification models with stress, strain, and fracture data for the engineering applications. So these are the few references you can just go through to find out more content about the structural geology. Keshavlu and Chenna, textbook of engineering geology, and Venkat Reddy, engineering geology, Vasudev Kaniti, engineering geology. These are the few textbooks you can just go through to find out the more content about the structural geology, and you can understand better about the structural geology, because it plays a very important role in the foundation, very important role in the designing process of earthquake resistant building or any disaster resistant building processes. So that's all for today. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.